Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Behind the Crime Scene. I'm your host, and today we're doing something a little different. With the Patrick Stephenson murder trial set to begin on April 8th, 2026, I want to prepare you for what's coming. This is going to be one of Australia's most closely watched trials, and there are critical questions that need to be answered. Today, we're going to break down what to expect, what questions the prosecution and defence will need to address, and what key evidence could make or break this case. Whether you've been following this story since Samantha Murphy disappeared in February 2024, or you're just learning about it now, this video will help you understand what's at stake when this trial begins. Before we dive in, my standard reminder, Patrick Stephenson has pleaded not guilty to murdering Samantha Murphy. He is presumed innocent until proven guilty. What we're discussing today are the questions that the trial will seek to answer, not conclusions about guilt or innocence. Let's get into it. First, let's establish what this trial is actually about. Patrick Orrin Stephenson, now 24 years old, stands accused of murdering 51-year-old Samantha Murphy on February 4th, 2024, in Ballarat, Victoria. The prosecution will need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that 1. Samantha Murphy is dead. 2. Patrick Stephenson killed her. 3. He did so with murderous intent. That third point is crucial. In Australian law, murder requires proof of intent to kill or intent to cause really serious injury that the person knew was likely to cause death. This is what separates murder from manslaughter. Now, here's what makes this case particularly challenging. Samantha Murphy's body has never been found. This is what we call a no-body murder case, and these are notoriously difficult to prosecute. Without a body, the prosecution faces some significant hurdles. But it's not impossible. Australia has successfully prosecuted no-body murder cases before. The key is building a circumstantial case so strong that there's no reasonable explanation other than murder. So what will the prosecution need to establish? Let's break this down into the key pillars of their case. Pillar 1. Proof of death. Even without a body, the prosecution must prove that Samantha Murphy is dead and did not simply disappear voluntarily. They'll likely argue Samantha had no reason to disappear. She was devoted to her 3 children, had a stable family life, and no financial or personal problems that would cause her to run away. Her phone, wallet, and identification were found abandoned in a dam. Someone who voluntarily disappears typically takes these items. She's had no contact with family, friends, or financial accounts since February 4th, 2024. The passage of time. Nearly 2 years without any sign of life. Police will testify that their investigation found no evidence she's alive. Question to watch for. Will the defense suggest Samantha could still be alive? Or will they concede she's deceased, but argue someone else is responsible? Pillar 2. Placing Stephenson at the scene. The prosecution needs to put Patrick Stephenson at Mount Clear on the morning of February 4th, 2024, when and where they allege the attack occurred. This is where that unprecedented amount of evidence comes in. We know police have extensive CCTV footage. Ballarat, like most Australian cities, has cameras everywhere. Traffic cameras, business security cameras, residential Ring doorbells. The prosecution likely has footage tracking both Samantha's and Stephenson's movements that morning. Mobile phone data. This is huge. Cell tower pings, GPS data, and app activity can place someone at a specific location at a specific time. Remember, Samantha's phone was found in near-perfect condition. If it was recording data before it was disposed of, that's crucial evidence. Witness testimony. Did anyone see Stephenson that morning? Did anyone see his vehicle? Were there any interactions captured on camera? Questions to watch for. What does the CCTV footage actually show? Does it place Stephenson and Samantha in the same location? What does the mobile phone data reveal about their movements? Can the prosecution establish they were both in Mount Clear at the same time? Pillar 3. Motive. Here's where it gets really interesting. Police have said they believe Stephenson did not know Samantha Murphy or her family. If that's true, what was the motive? Possible theories the prosecution might present. A random attack. Samantha was in the wrong place at the wrong time. A crime of opportunity that escalated, something related to the location where the alleged attack occurred. Some connection between them that hasn't been publicly disclosed. This is one of the biggest mysteries in this case. In most murder cases, there's a clear motive, a relationship gone wrong, financial gain, revenge. But if Stephenson truly didn't know Samantha, why would he attack her? Questions to watch for. Will the prosecution establish any connection between Stephenson and Murphy? What motive will they present? How will they explain why this happened? Pillar 4. What happened to the body? This is perhaps the prosecution's biggest challenge. They need to explain what Stephenson allegedly did with Samantha's body. We know. Stephenson has been taken to search sites multiple times by police. Excavators have been used in Enfield State Park. The searches have focused on bushland areas south of Ballarat. Despite extensive efforts, no remains have been found. The prosecution will likely present evidence of where they believe the body was taken. Forensic evidence from Stephenson's vehicle, if any. Digital evidence showing his movements after the alleged attack. Possible testimony from Stephenson himself, if he made any statements to police. Questions to watch for. Did police find any forensic evidence in Stephenson's vehicle or property? Can they trace his movements after the alleged attack? Did soil, samples, vegetation, or other trace evidence link him to disposal sites? Did Stephenson make any admissions or statements to police? Pillar 5. Samantha's phone and personal items. Remember, Samantha's phone, wallet, credit cards, and driver's license were found at the bottom of a dam in May 2024, 3 months after she disappeared. The phone was in near perfect condition. The prosecution will want to establish when these items were disposed of, who disposed of them, what data was on the phone before it was thrown away, whether there's any evidence linking Stephenson to the disposal. This is critical evidence. If they can prove Stephenson disposed of these items, that's powerful circumstantial evidence. Questions to watch for. What does the phone data show about Samantha's final movements? Is there CCTV or other evidence of someone disposing of items at the dam? Can they link Stephenson to that location? Were there any fingerprints or DNA on the phone case? Now let's flip this around. Patrick Stephenson has pleaded not guilty. What will his defense team argue? The defense doesn't have to prove anything. The burden of proof is entirely on the prosecution. But they will likely pursue several strategies. Strategy 1. Attacking the no body problem. The defense will hammer on the fact that there's no body. They might argue, without a body, you can't prove cause of death. You can't prove the manner of death. You can't definitively prove Samantha is even dead. You can't establish when death occurred. There's no forensic evidence from the body itself. They'll remind the jury that the prosecution must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Without a body, can you really be certain? Question to watch for. How strong is the defense's argument that lack of a body creates reasonable doubt? Strategy 2. Alternative explanations. The defense will offer alternative explanations for the evidence. For example, if CCTV shows Stephenson in the area, they might say he was just driving through. If phone data puts him nearby, they'll argue correlation isn't causation. They might suggest someone else attacked Samantha. They could argue the investigation focused too quickly on Stephenson and missed other suspects. Questions to watch for. What alternative explanations does the defense offer? Are these explanations plausible? Can they point to any other potential suspects? Strategy 3. Challenging the evidence. The defense will scrutinize every piece of evidence. Is the CCTV footage clear enough to identify Stephenson? Is the phone data accurate? Was the investigation conducted properly? Was any evidence contaminated or mishandled? Are there gaps in the prosecution's timeline? They'll look for any weakness, any uncertainty, any gap that creates reasonable doubt. Questions to watch for. Does the defense successfully poke holes in the prosecution's case? Are there significant gaps in the evidence? Can they establish an alibi for Stephenson? Strategy 4. Character and background. The defense might present Patrick Stephenson as A young man with no history of violence, except for the traffic offences, someone who had no connection to Samantha Murphy, a person who had no reason to harm her, someone who's been wrongly accused. They may call character witnesses, family, friends, employers, to paint a picture of someone incapable of this crime. Questions to watch for. What picture does the defence paint of Stephenson? Do they address his prior drunk and drug driving incidents? How do they explain why he was arrested if he's innocent? As we watch this trial unfold, here are the key questions we should be asking. Question 1. What does the CCTV footage actually show? Police have described the evidence as unprecedented. What's on those cameras? Do they show Stephenson and Murphy together? Do they show an attack? Or is it more circumstantial, showing both people in the same general area? Question 2. What do the phone records reveal? Both Samantha's phone and presumably Stephenson's phone will have left digital breadcrumbs. What do those breadcrumbs show? Can they map out a timeline of events? Question 3. Is there any forensic evidence? Without a body, forensic evidence becomes even more critical. Is there blood evidence, DNA, fibres, soil samples, evidence from vehicles or clothing? Question 4. Did Stephenson make any admissions? Did he say anything to police? During those site visits, did he indicate where the body might be? Or has he maintained complete silence? Question 5. What's the motive? If they truly didn't know each other, why did this happen? The answer to this question could be key to the entire case. Question 6. Where is Samantha Murphy? Can the prosecution explain what happened to her body? Do they have evidence of where it was taken? Question 7. What was Stephenson doing that morning? Can the defence provide a convincing explanation for his whereabouts and activities on February 4th, 2024? Question 8. How strong is the circumstantial case? In a no-body murder, the circumstantial evidence must be overwhelming. Does it all point to Stephenson, or are there gaps and uncertainties? Section 5. The legal standards. What the jury must consider. It's important to understand what the jury will be instructed to consider. In Australian criminal trials, particularly in Victoria, the judge will give very specific directions. Beyond reasonable doubt. The prosecution must prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt. This doesn't mean beyond all doubt. That's impossible. But it means the evidence must be so compelling that a reasonable person would have no real doubt about guilt. The defence will remind the jury repeatedly, if you're not sure, you must acquit. Circumstantial evidence. The judge will explain that circumstantial evidence is perfectly valid. You can convict on circumstantial evidence alone if it's strong enough. But the judge will also instruct that if the circumstantial evidence is consistent with innocence as well as guilt, you must acquit. This is crucial in a no-body case. The prosecution's circumstantial evidence must be consistent only with guilt. Presumption of innocence. The jury will be told that Stephenson is presumed innocent. The prosecution must prove guilt. The defence doesn't have to prove innocence. Let's think about who might testify in this trial. Prosecution witnesses. Victoria Police investigators who work the case, forensic experts, phone data analysts, CCTV analysts, forensic scientists. Samantha Murphy's family members to establish her state of mind, her routines, why she wouldn't disappear voluntarily. Witnesses who may have seen Samantha or Stephenson that morning. Experts on the search areas and terrain. Possibly people who knew Stephenson, if they're building a case about his character or behaviour. Defence witnesses. Patrick Stephenson himself. Maybe. This is a huge decision. Character witnesses for Stephenson. Expert witnesses to challenge the prosecution's evidence. Alibi witnesses if they have any. Possibly experts on no-body prosecutions and the problems with such cases. One critical question. Will Patrick Stephenson testify? If he does, it's a huge risk. He'll face cross-examination from the prosecution, and anything he says can be scrutinised. But it also gives him a chance to tell his side directly to the jury. If he doesn't testify, the jury might wonder why not, though they'll be instructed not to hold it against him. This trial will be heavily covered by Australian media. As we've seen, this case has captured national attention. But here's what's important to remember. The jury won't be watching YouTube videos or reading news articles during the trial. They'll be instructed to base their decision only on evidence presented in court. However, public opinion matters in another way. This trial represents the justice system in action. It's a test of whether Australia can successfully prosecute a no-body murder case with circumstantial evidence. The Ballarat community, Samantha's family and people across Australia will be watching to see if justice is served, whatever that means in this case. Let's talk about what's at stake here. If convicted of murder, Patrick Stephenson would face a mandatory life sentence under Victorian law. The judge would set a non-parole period, minimum time before he can apply for parole. In a case like this, that could be 25 years or more. If acquitted, Stephenson would walk free. He cannot be tried again for the same crime due to double jeopardy protections. Samantha's family would be left without justice, and the question of what happened to her would remain unanswered. If the jury can't reach a verdict, if the jury is hung, can't agree, there could be a retrial. The prosecution would have to decide whether to try again. Alternative verdicts. In Victoria, juries can consider lesser charges. If they don't think the prosecution proved murder, they might consider manslaughter. This would result in a lesser sentence, but would still be a conviction. When this trial begins in April 2026, here's what to pay attention to. Opening statements. The prosecution will lay out their entire case. This is your roadmap for the trial. What evidence do they say they have? What's their theory of what happened? The defence opening will tell you their strategy. Are they attacking the evidence? Offering an alternative explanation? Claiming mistaken identity? Key witnesses. Watch the lead investigator's testimony. This is usually where the prosecution presents its overall case. Watch any forensic experts carefully. The technical evidence can be complex, but it's often the most important. If Stephenson testifies, that will be the most dramatic moment of the trial. Cross-examination. This is where cases are won or lost. Watch how the defence cross-examines prosecution witnesses and vice versa. Are they poking holes in the testimony? Are witnesses holding up under pressure? Closing arguments. This is where both sides pull everything together and make their final pitch to the jury. The prosecution will argue that all the evidence points to guilt beyond reasonable doubt. The defence will highlight every gap, every uncertainty, every reason to doubt. Jury deliberation. Once the jury gets the case, the wait begins. In a complex case like this, deliberations could take days or even weeks. The longer they take, the more it suggests disagreement among jurors. Beyond the specific facts of this case, this trial matters for several reasons. It's a test of no-body prosecutions. Can Australia successfully prosecute a murder without a body? This case will set precedents for future cases. It's about justice for Samantha. A mother of 3 deserves justice. Her family deserves answers. This trial is about whether the justice system can deliver that. It's about the presumption of innocence. Patrick Stephenson is entitled to a fair trial and the presumption of innocence. This trial will test whether the system protects those rights, even in a high-profile case. It's about community healing. Ballarat has been devastated by this case. The trial represents a step toward closure, regardless of the outcome. So there you have it, a comprehensive look at what to expect when the Patrick Stephenson murder trial begins on April 8th, 2026. This will be a 6-week trial. Possibly longer. It will be complex, technical at times, and emotionally difficult. The prosecution faces the challenge of proving murder without a body. The defence will argue that the evidence doesn't prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The key questions we need answered. What happened on February 4th, 2024? Can the prosecution prove Patrick Stephenson killed Samantha Murphy? Where is Samantha Murphy? Will the jury convict without a body? I'll be covering this trial extensively on this channel. We'll break down the key testimony, analyse the evidence as it's presented, and help you understand what it all means. Remember, this is about seeking truth and justice. Whether you think Stephenson is guilty or innocent, we all share a common goal in wanting to know what really happened to Samantha Murphy. Before we go, I want to emphasise one more time. Patrick Stephenson has pleaded not guilty. Everything we've discussed today are questions to be answered at trial, not conclusions about guilt. The jury will make that determination based on evidence presented in court. If you found this video helpful in understanding what's coming, please like and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our trial coverage starting in April. And please, in the comments, keep the discussion respectful. This is about a real family who lost a real person. Let's honour that by keeping our focus on facts and justice. Thank you for watching Behind the Crime Scene. I'll see you in the next video.